Hi guys, this video is going to be about what I would refer to as depression. Now, I think this can be why I use it because it's like a statement. Well, I have been diagnosed with depression in the past. It's just like if you look at depression, it's just a number of symptoms, right? And so I think it depends on how for some people it can be more debilitating than others, and I think there are different things that stem off of that initial depression. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm just experiencing, like, talking about from my experience, and like understanding that mine can be different than other people's. So for me, I'm just going to describe what I experienced as depression and what that looked like, and then also things where there are different things that, so they're different. There's depression, but then there's also like burnout, like emotional burnout, but then also like mental burnout, and these are all different things where it's like we'll get into them, but I'm going to start with the depression. So the depression from me, or in regards to me, was like no interest in anything. I just want to numb out. I just want to lay on the couch. I was sad, obviously, like that's, a core component. I was just sad. And when I was depressed, it was normally because I wasn't getting, like, it's interesting when I look back at it now, because I'm like, oh my God, why did I had a lot of grieving to do from my upbringing, and that's what I associated with. So it's like, there was like a situation. I really thought this person was going to be my person, and I just thought I just had to do better for them to recognize my value, and that never happened until it was too late and I was no longer interested, right? But before that point, like, I really felt some sort of way about that. But in the process, it's interesting because I feel like that depression came to a head where it's like my body could no longer take on more, like, it isolated me, and I needed to be isolated because the rooms that I was in, it's almost like they were just piling their shit on top of me, and I wasn't aware of it, because when you're grown up in that's your norm, so you don't recognize that, right? It's kind of like, if you grow up in a cold climate, you don't really feel the cold as you would if you were raised in a warm environment, and you don't notice the heat as much, right? So like that's kind of the same thing when you grow up in an emotionally abusive home where you're just expected to tolerate the bad behavior and pretend like it's not happening. You tend to like lose sight of it, and now that becomes a blind spot, right? And so the people that I had around me, the family is mostly family. It would be coworkers and then romantic partners. Like, I didn't have friends. Like, I didn't go out and hang out. I was during this time, I was being a single parent, and I didn't have any help. So like my kids were a lot of my time and the household. And so I didn't have a lot of time for myself anyways. And so I think that's where this actually was able to germinate. I'm a garden girl. I'm gonna mesh these things. But with the narcissist, because it was like they had their own kids, and so it was very easy for him to say, like, I can't come over because I got my own kids, but he would use that often. And so I was often left by myself wondering about, like, why am I by myself here? Like, why can't I, it's like a very sad state, because I'm like, why is this not working? Why can't I have a person? Why can't I have this? And I cried a lot. Like, I cried a lot. This ties into those electrolytes, right? Because during this time also, I was very depleted, and I didn't realize it. This would be about in 2021, 2020, 2021. And this is when I I tried to start my business, my spiritual business, and I was just tired. I'd been a single mom for so long. I didn't have help. I didn't have support. If I did get help, there are like strings attached to it. So it felt like I didn't, like, what's the point of getting help if like your kids are going to be around someone who's just going to be negative and damaging to your kids? Like, the help that I was receiving was from the supply, the people who wanted supply. you know? So it almost felt like, okay, if I send my kids over with them, it feels like my kids are just gonna be used as supply, or even like used as ammo against me. So it's just like, you know, because they felt some sort of way about me, it's almost like they're gonna take it out on my kids. Or they were like the people that I had, you know, access to help was my family, but my family was miserable. So it's like, I don't want to put my kids in that position. And like, even though I needed rest so bad and I was so exhausted, like there were times, and then I would feel guilty for that, because I'm like, they'd come back and, you know, it's like, okay, did you have fun? Like we played Xbox all night. Like, what? Like, you could do that here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want you playing Xbox. I want you to get out and, like, I don't want you playing Xbox here. Like, the idea is that you went over there to go see your family members and, like, hang out with your aunt and your cousins, not, like, spend time with the Xbox, you know? And, yeah, so it's just, it was frustrating because, like, during this time, I just felt like I was so tired. I was so weighed down. It felt like nothing I could do was turning out. Which makes sense because, like I said, it wasn't meant to turn out. That wasn't for me. And in the moment, I couldn't see that. And so the depression, it's like I just had taken on too much. I had too many failures. I didn't know how to process it. It's like too many negative emotions that I just could not process them. So I was carrying them around. And you get to, that's what the depression is. You can no longer carry these emotional burdens of others, but also, like, I had to recognize how, as long as I'm in the rooms with these people, I was expected to carry that burden. I wasn't allowed to speak up. If I spoke up, like, everything would be turned on me. I was taking on their projection. You know, it's like I would try to have conversations with them and they would just yell, like some people would just yell over top of me. They would not return my answers. Like they would stonewall me. Is that when they don't respond? They would just, you know, wait so long. It's like, I know you've got your phone in your hand. I know you're there, like, and you're just gonna ignore me. You know what I mean? Like it's like all of it hit at once. And I just saw in my mind, like a pile of dirt laid on me. And I just laid there for a long time. Like anytime I had, there's a couple years in my backyard. And when I first got here in 2019, I was so gung-ho because I had just like a square plot out back of just lawn. And my backyard is so open to neighbors. So I'm just like, that really got me out of my body and, or into my body, but out of my mind. But there's, out of my mind. I created a nice space out there, but it still felt like I couldn't go there because I wanted seclusion. I wanted privacy. I just felt like I was always like being watched by people, and not in a paranoid way. It just felt like people were observing. It's almost like, you know, when someone's, you know, the idea of like struggling in front of somebody sucks. And I had to get comfortable with it. Because I saw like, you know what, eventually I'm going to be putting myself out there, and I had to get comfortable with like not being, you know, perfect. And it's not that I was even close to perfect, but the idea of it was like, you know what, like I fuck up. And so like being a garden girl actually really helped me with that, because there's so many mistakes I made in my backyard, and it's like outside for everyone to see as opposed to inside on the renos here. And you're getting a good view here. That is intentional. But I will do a house tour at some point. Just, I think it's important for people to see that people who are recovering from narcissistic abuse, that's why my hair isn't washed right now, because do you know what I mean? This is what happens. This oiliness, I want you to take note. This is what happens when I reintroduce caffeine and dairy back into my life after I haven't had it for so long. This is why I drink the Ticino herbal coffee, and I have the protein cashew almond milk, because I find it gives me that texture that I'm looking for. And while I have to be careful, and maybe you can relate to this, like certain items make me bloat because of I'm sensitive to certain thickening agents and stuff like that. But dairy is not my friend. And I don't know if like certain fermented dairies are okay. I don't really want to try that out. I also have introduced like probiotics with prebiotics that are fermented fruits and veggies, as opposed to the lacto whatever they are that are pulled from what I understand from dairy products. So like if you're sensitive to dairy and you recognize that, and it's not just because your stomach can't digest, but it's because that's, dairy is really meant for like children. So, growing children. So while we're growing in our mind, we're no longer growing in our body. So that's where I think dairy is not meant for us, but teach their own. And so during this time of like depression, I had a lot of, like, I watched a lot of sad movies that would remind me, like, not intentionally, but I would cry a lot. Things were coming up for me a lot. And I would get frustrated. I would get pissed off. And even, so in the depression also happened with the discard, right? Because I was abandoned. I was discarded. I was like, and not just by like a romantic partner, by family. So like, if I don't accept you, this is the conflicting part. Like, if I don't accept you as you are, then like the love is conditional. And I had to make my love conditional in the way that, like, I still love my family, but I can't tolerate this bad behavior. There's no excuses for it. This is like immature bad behavior. Like, you need to grow up. This is like dealing with a high school student that is 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. That is unacceptable. And the thing is, the way I learned to look at this, I kind of touched on this in my past video, is like, are these people safe? So it's not that the ability to like not label people like, are you narcissist? Because the thing is, I can look at my father and I can see elements of me within him. Like, he is hardworking. He worked his ass off. But like, when you, unfortunately, if you don't learn to recognize that people aren't willing to, like, you have to get out of your comfort zone to put yourself in that room where people can see you shine. And so if you're constantly hanging out in rooms where people are trying to smother your light, you're never going to get anywhere to where you need to be. And learning to recognize that and get yourself out of that, he did do, like, he's into acting, and he's been in some very he's been in a popular movie, that Jesse James movie. He was a extra there, and he has so many skills that I can see, like, he's very good at like putting stuff together. I think see, as I talk about my father, I can see so many good things about him. I can see his potential. I can see his value. But if he doesn't see that, and he doesn't place himself in the right space to thrive instead of survival mode, my hands are tied there. And so what would happen is he would come over to our house, and it would be like my kid's birthday, and he's like talking about things that are not kid-like politics, and like, very stereotypical, unkind thoughts. And then it's like, he wasn't engaged with the kids and playing with them. He would just sit on the couch because he didn't take care of his health either. He didn't prioritize himself ever. And he was very religious. And he was very like sacrificial in nature. And I noticed aspects of me within him, like that, those things that I was playing out. I'm going to do a video about that, of mirroring. So it's not that I don't love my father. It's just like, there are times like when we were in the grocery store, like, he would give so much attention to complete strangers, but at home, like, I was ignored. Like, you have, and I can see where I did that with my kids, because I was a single mom and I was totally exhausted and I didn't have help. Now, he had my mom and he had family, and my Aunt Ellie was really something. And so she was very supportive from what I can remember. Even though she was religious in nature, there was a different, there's different spectrums of religion. So some of them are more understanding than others. So I do understand that. So I don't like to, like I said, I don't like to put a blanket out there. I just know there's some foundational beliefs in some of these religions that really are controlling and fear-mongering. And that's, so it was really hard to have him around, because he, like, I wanted him there to be a grandpa for my kids, like an opa for my kids, and he would take them on some great trips, but like, when he takes them on the trips, like, he doesn't consider that they need to stop often for a bathroom. Like, he doesn't consider them. It's almost like, that's what I mean, like, they're there for him. He's not there for them. That's parentification. Like, you're there to ask about the kids. It's not like he would set up scenarios around the holidays, like he'd try to start conversations, but they were designed to always come back to him so he could talk about what he had done in his life. Like, I see you, Dad. I think you're very valuable. The problem is you don't see your value. And so you're so focused on what went wrong as opposed to what things went right. And so when I look at him, like, he has narcissistic traits. I don't like to label because I don't know that he's like a full-blown narcissist. I think he experienced some very traumatic events in his time that he wasn't able to work through. But at the same time, it's like when you're still like feral in nature in certain areas and you're not like able to restrain that hate and hurt that you have, you're going to spill out onto your grandkids. You're going to spill out onto me. I'm already carrying my own burdens. I'm already a single mom. The idea is like, and even if it's like, I didn't even need him to like take the kids off my hands. It's like, you can come over and visit, but if you come over and visit and you're spilling hate and doom and gloom, like, we already have enough shit that we're dealing with here. We don't need yours too. And it's not that I can't be supportive of other people going through rough times. This was not just a season. This is a lifestyle. There's a difference, you know, like depression. Like, if you choose, like, and from what my experience is, like, I'm getting out of that. I'm recognizing where I don't want to stay in the sadness. I can do something different. I can create something different. I have to acknowledge the depression. I had to see where these emotions were being created. Why? Where were they coming from? And how can I manage them instead of like absorb? It's kind of like when you put seeds into like, you know, if you overwater them and they're waterlogged, and like the seeds can't grow there. And then you also have like, you know, the fungus and stuff that will prevent the seed from growing. The emotions in the depression, well, and then you can look at it like it's soaking the seed, because that outer shell needs to be soaked and softened in order to then sprout and grow, right? So like in that sadness, it was a beneficial stage for me to, like, for one, I needed rest and I wasn't willing to stop and rest. So it forced me. It forced me to lay down and stop running into all these different rooms that were, you know, I was lost. I didn't know. I was like, maybe I got to do this. Maybe I got to do this. Maybe, like, and then I wasn't even thinking, do I want to do this? Is this, like, I got to get a relationship, but is that person even for me? Like, they're just a man. Like, what are my standards like if I just need a man as a partner? He had a job. I didn't want to, you know, being, parenting is, or not parenting, but like being there for his kids was not ideal. It was because I was not getting the same in return. Like, so I had to think of like, I felt like I was so like just tolerant of like, you know, when I was a single mom, I'm like, you know what, it feels like this would be easier if I had a partner, you know, financially, and to divide the tasks, like, you know, you cut the lawn, I do the garden, you know, like just breaking up the responsibility. But I was attracted to insecure men, and they were attracted to me because I couldn't see my true value. And so like what seemed like it would be helpful to have a partner, the partners I was picking were damaging. You know, they were insecure. They didn't have security. They required me to hold them up, you know, and like, you know, just I'm thinking of like when I was in, you know, cheer squad when I was younger in high school for a season. And it's just like, I was the one that would hold the person up and lift them up and like stabilize, right? And then catch at the back. And I'm just like, that's cool. I really love that job, or that position, but it's just like, to do that long term it's just like, I can't keep positioning these people up here on their pedestal while I'm not receiving any sort of support myself. Like, where am I ever getting the support? Because even when it's like you're coming over to support me and help me with my kids, you're still taking something from the kids, you know? That's still taking. That's not receiving. And I have no problem giving to people. I overgive. And I love cooking for people. I used to love cooking for people. I have to get back to that because my focus is not, I'm not able to like, I have to slow things down now because I can't just, my brain is different than it was before, and not in a bad way. I mean, I think it's helpful to slow things down because before I used to race and exhaust myself. So in this new me, this new version, I've had to slow things down. And because of the depression, like in that time, it's like I wasn't exercising, I was eating badly, and so like you know, now I'm in my comfy pants. I miss my jeans. I'm getting back into my jeans, but we're not there yet. But like, you have to, like, once you've been seated, you then have to gradually grow back into something, but it's not meant to be the same as what you came from. And there's a reason for that, because what you came from is not healthy. It's not balanced. It was overworked, overwhelmed, underpaid, under receiving, like is out of balance. And people are like, oh, life is not balanced. Well, that's your opinion. I believe I can balance it. And it's not like in a move. It's not like it's just like balance. Like things ebb and flow. I understand that. Life is like that. Like you can't, prepare for everything. But I think when you learn to develop certain tools in life and how you can, different perspective, to look at something differently so it doesn't affect you harshly, but still you're realistic, I think that's helpful in life, because you're like, you know what? This is disappointing, because like after the point of when I'm like getting back up again, the idea of a partner is out there, and then you recognize you're still settling, and there is a disappointment. And like even when you think even if it's not a relationship, that it's like a job, and you're just like, I really thought I could grow here, and I can see where I can add value, and then you have to leave that environment, and you're like, that kind of sucks, because I knew I could have done a lot there. And then you're just like, well, maybe it's just not for me. And it's that disappointment gets less and less, because that depression, what I learned there was to rest, and I didn't know how to rest before. And that's not complete rest, but I was practicing the pause. I had no choice but to like get clarity on how I got to where I was at, why my life wasn't working. That depression gave me that pause that I needed to take the time out for me, because I wasn't giving to me, not in the right way, and not in a healthy way. And so the depression helped create that pause between like where I was and where I needed to go. And so some people associate depression with darkness and negativity, but for me is an essential part of my path, because it, like I said, it slowed me down to start looking at where and why I was moving the way I was, or not moving, where I was creating my own problems, because we all have control. And so before the depression, it felt like, why me? And then after the depression, it's almost like it led me to the path of, why not me? In a more positive tone. Like, it's like, why can't I do this? Why isn't this for me? And before it was like, it feels like I just have to make the most of what I've got. And I was like constantly shopping from thrift stores and trying to make something out of nothing. And like, while that's a helpful trait to have, that's a lack mindset. Like, I deserve prosperity. I grew up in survival mode. And the confusing part is, it's not even that bad. Like, we had a lot of things that other families don't have. And so like, you would think, well, you should be grateful, and that's settling energy to think that's all you should attain. I remember having a family member telling me that I should only, I had a condo, and I should be happy with a condo, and I shouldn't own a house because I'm a single parent. And like, really think about like, I think it's good enough that you have a condo as a single mom. And I'm like, that's weird to say. And it showed me who they were. That's an odd, like, she thinks I'm only entitled to receive this much, but I work my ass off. So it shouldn't matter if I'm a single mom or not. If I know how to work, and I know my value, and I'm getting my education, and I'm informing and teaching myself, that should be unlimited. Like, what the fuck? A condo? There's some weird, and if you look at it really caused me to look about, in that depression, when I couldn't do anything for myself, I was not receiving what I had given to other people. And that's very interesting. I used to watch, as a single parent, I used to watch other people's kids often. And when I had the family kids over, like the cousins and stuff, like, we had flower fights, we had fun, we played around, we laughed, we joked, we played games. And it wasn't just like sitting in front of a video game. I mean, there were moments of that, but I really tried to get them outdoors, and we tried to take trips and stuff, like day trips, and get out there. It's more challenging when you have a kid come over and they're used to like the video game all the time, that they don't really seem excited to do other stuff at sometimes. And I think that maybe because like they're just uncertain about that, and it's like out of their norm. And it's weird, because there are times when I recognize, like, I had anxiety when me and my son were we're going to go to this place. And it felt very scary for me, because it was like, we're going to go, I think it was like fishing off a dock, but the dock, the way it was, like, you had to drive along this roadway where the water was almost level with the roadway. And I felt very uncertain about that. And then at the end, where all the docks were, is like where people all kept their boats and stuff. And then I'm like, oh my God, this feels anxious. I don't feel good enough to be out here for some reason. I didn't feel comfortable in my skin. And then I also felt uncertain because it was a new environment. So we never made it there. We did, but we didn't, because like I also like didn't have a lot of money, and like the idea was, I forget what we were gonna do. I think we were gonna rent a boat and go boating, but something I felt, and so that was a lack of confidence, that anxiety was telling me like, you just don't feel prepared for this. And maybe I wasn't, because like for me, I recognize that anxiety says like, maybe I need more information, maybe I need more confidence, maybe I need more, some, it's like jumping. It's like too big of a, this is too much too soon. That's what it felt like it was telling me. And even though I might have been capable of it, something felt like too much. And like sometimes, like when you're coming out of these environments, like the baby steps are important, because like that's how you build momentum. And that fast energy says I have to do all this to get here, I think is how that works. But yeah, so the depression gave me a chance to really look at who is for me and who is not. Like when I was depressed, when you see about like, when you see people who like, I watch videos where like, oh, I don't want to get emotional with this, but like people would, recognize someone who was having a hard time, and they would send like meals to their house, or like, I would have loved that. As a single mom, struggling through like what I was going through, like I don't ever remember anyone checking in with me. Like, unless it was to get information about my situation or other people's information, I don't ever remember having like an authentic, genuine, like, how are you doing? I do that for other people because I would like it done to me. And that's another kind of like realization that feels sad. Like no one's ever, it felt like anyone is checking in to get something from me, and like whether it be support or company, but it's like it doesn't ever feel like it was done to like really check in for me, and so like during this journey of like growing and changing, like I have done this alone. The friends that I did have were not for me. They were giving very bad advice, and it was always about them, and they needed me because I was so accepting of people. It's like we'd sit there and talk, and they're, I believe anyone can change, and I don't like to judge people at where they're at, because I'm not perfect, and I've been at low points, and I've made bad decisions and bad choices, and so like I don't want to be judged either, because you know what, like that's, you only know what you know in that moment, and depending on what you started off educationally wise and awareness wise, like that makes sense, that like if that was the messages that you were programmed with, what do you expect from that? But at some point we need to acknowledge like this isn't working, we need to do different. So there are people that they're contacting me because I made them feel good about their bad decisions, because I'm like, I try to give advice, but at the same time I have to let you do what you're going to do. I'm not here to control you, but at the same time I'm not here to pick up your mess anymore either. And so that's when I had to disconnect from these people, because it felt like their mess was spilling onto me, and I was expected just to, it's like when someone keeps doing the same thing over and over again, and like I'm telling you, like this is what helped me. I've been in a similar situation. They're just like, no, I think I'll just stick with this, and that's fine. Go do that. But if you keep doing that, I can't support that anymore. And some people aren't going to like the sound of that, but it's like you're affecting your kids. I can see how you're hurting your kids. And I'm trying to give you advice and saying, hey, maybe like stop dealing with men for a bit. Maybe you don't need a man. Because some of these people are running into those rooms and convincing, like their kids are, you got a lot of behavioral issues happening there with your kids. And why? So how do you even have time for a man right now? Like your kids need you. And there are times where I can relate to that as well. But their situations seem way more extreme because like of what's happening, right? And I'm just like, wow, like I didn't, my kids were reacting like this, and I said no to, because I'm like, this is what my kids need. And like your kids are like, really rampaging, and like you're still going out drinking and hooking up with random men, convincing yourself this is okay. Like it's just and maybe people said the same thing about me. I don't know. And some people will say, well, maybe that's why these people weren't around you when you were depressed, because you're making bad decisions. And that could be too. And if that's what you want it to be, that's fair too. But like, then I have every right to, like, when I recognize their bad behavior, then I get to distance too, And so what I learned too is like in this experience, I'm starting to like give people what I get. If you felt uncomfortable with the pain that I was in and how I was experiencing it, that's fair. But now I see that you're in that space and you're not growing. And so I have a right to step away now and not be there for you either. And some people may say that seems cold, but I've learned to give what I get because I know I have a tendency to overgive, and I give out of guilt, and I feel bad for people, which is guilt. And I have to recognize that, like, me giving and loving that person is not going to get them to change. I can give guidance and support, but if I feel like someone is talking shit behind my back, why would I, like, that's, I'm not talking shit behind their back. I'm like, there's a difference between, like, you know, gossip and like, expressing what you're experiencing from somebody. There's I think there's very different ways of doing that. So yeah, so that, I guess if you're experiencing depression right now, I would, for me, the depression is I'm not doing what I want to do in life. Something about my life is sad. What is sad about your life? What do you feel sad about? Like, are you grieving something that's not happening for you? And it's good to get that, in that grieving process, the depression, it starts with the emotion, and that's how we move to the logic. So it's important to say, okay, why am I feeling sad about this? What is the loss here? What is, like, doing devil's advocate and moving through the depression? I had to acknowledge, like, I was sad about something that wasn't happening with a person or with people. But then when I started bringing the logical mind and the devil's advocate, would I want my daughter to have friends like this? Would I want my kids to experience a partner like this? Do I want my kids to be around family like this? You know? And then that's what helped me get out of it. Because I had to realize, like, I was longing for something, somebody, a path that was never meant for me. That was somebody else's limitations on life that I had been kept under to suppress my growth. So I had to then become aware of the belief systems that were programming me to keep me in a lifestyle that was sad. You know, like, I deserve good things. If my parents didn't think that if my parents thought that they had to settle, sacrifice, those are horrible words. Settle and sacrifice. There are times where you have to sacrifice aspects of life to get somewhere else, but not yourself, not your truth, not your humanity, not your authenticity. You're not meant to sacrifice that. You know, if I have to be frugal in nature until I get to where I'm going, that makes sense. But I'm meant to have everything that I need, and that is support. That is, you know, guidance from God. And what I mean by that is, like, some people didn't like the path that I was walking as I was learning and growing and stumbling along, and it made them feel uncomfortable because they were so stuck. And a lot of people have a lot of issues with, like, me using cards, and they say that's not how you connect to God, but that's how I connect to God. Who says your version is better than mine? Who are you? I had people who were in God, you know, what is it? People were taking on the role of God in my life and saying, you can't do that. That's not how you do that. And it's like, your version of God is very different than mine, because the way they connect to God is by using, you know, the Bible to control other people and manipulate other people. How is that God's source energy? How is that a connect? God does not want you to behave that way. God doesn't want you to stagnate. I believe heaven is here on earth. I believe hell is here too. And I think we get to choose. And so people will, like, expect that God's going to come save them. And so they stay in a sacrificial energy of where they're expected to, you know, suppress their true self and their happiness and the contentedness to achieve what? And I feel like they get to the end of their life and they're like, why did I choose that? Like, where did I go in life? I stayed the same Groundhog Day every day of my life. And while consistency is important and discipline to learn that to get to success, it doesn't mean we have to live a life of unfulfillment, doing the same thing over and calling it life and living, when you're settling, sacrificing, you know, and supplementing with substances that are like, this is where people think, like, you know, this is where when I fell into depression, it's because I was living a fast lifestyle where I thought, you know, I was living someone else's vision. And it was in society. This isn't something my parents did. My dad never drank. He would have sherry once in a while. He wasn't a drinker. But when it was in high school, I fell into alcohol hard because I was so sad and I was so bundled up, like so tight, because I wasn't allowed to express my emotions. I wasn't allowed to speak my truth. And so that the alcohol was a gateway to like exhale. And it's not the healthiest way, but it's part of my path. I didn't stay there though. I didn't settle in the alcohol. It was very uncomfortable. When I recognized the night after drinking that I was very emotional and I was sad in front of my group of people who were not my friends, and they couldn't understand what I was experiencing. So there was a lot of, mocking and belittling. And instead of, I wasn't getting support, I was getting judgment, and I was getting gossip, and I was getting not friendship. And they were drinking too. They just did things different. They just would be very sexual in nature. And that was okay though. So that was okay. But when I was sad in nature, that was not okay. So like, it's interesting how some people will make judgments on your behaviors when you're drinking. But their behaviors that they make are considered more confident. Being sexually active is more confident than being sad in your alcohol state, It's just very weird how some people will make judgments and say, well, I only drink during, this period of time, and so I behave like this, so that's okay. It's just odd. And that's what I learned in the depression as well. Is like, people will make certain rules for you, but not for them, And, some people will make bad decisions and cheat on their partners, and they'll blame alcohol for it. And then that's okay. I did it because the alcohol made me do it, but you drank the alcohol. You're the one holding the bottle. And so we all have to be accountable for our decisions. And so I looked up to people when I was in the depression before I hit it, and I was looking up to people for all the wrong reasons. I thought like the men I was trying to connect to, they seemed to be better than me in some way because they were more social, and I was not social. I was a loner. And so I looked up to them and thinking they must know something I know. And then I had a friend who, her boyfriend watched porn all the time, and she was totally fine with it. And she was totally fine that he hung out at strip clubs. And I thought that was a confidence that I didn't have. So I'm like, something's wrong with me because I'm not comfortable with that. But she seemed very confident because she had no problem with him going to look at all these other women. And she labeled that confidence because she's okay with him looking at it. But to me, that seemed odd. Like, why does he need all of that when he has you? Like, I just don't, it feels like, when someone's shopping all the time and they have the appliances in their kitchen, but they have to keep upgrading their appliances. It's like when you have the decorations, but you have to constantly change every season your decorations, but you already have a pillow there and you like the color. So why do we need to change it in the winter, in the spring, in the fall, in the summer? Like, it makes sense from season to season as in temperature, but just because you want to change the color like that, I don't know, like, it was just odd. Like, when you look at things differently, and so I used to want to, like, I looked at myself as less than and then higher than me. And that's where the depression needed to change my perspective. And I had to recognize that what I was chasing, what I was trying to be like those were not my mentors. Those people, I had more here and there than what those people had. And I thought they had something that I didn't have. It's like thinking I wanted to earn money so I could buy a bigger house. But I don't need a bigger house. I like my house. I just want to update it and make it lower maintenance. And change it and make it better for me. Like, I do want privacy and things like that. I want to be able to be creative in my house. I don't need a bigger house. Like, if you look at some of these mansions, it's just a bunch of wasted space. And so before I hit that depression, I was surrounded by people who I thought were better than me. There were girls at work who they were in their clique, and I thought I wanted to be part of that group because I thought that they had something that I didn't. And then I realized, like, they're all just full of anxiety and they just go and drink and gossip. It's like in the depression, I gained clarity and about who people really were because of, like, they weren't the people who I thought they were. And when I started, asking questions about these people, and like, even if it was soft questioning, not harsh, like calling them out, I would start to see that was my first step into gaining clarity, into asking the hard questions in order to get those hard answers, the painful truth. The depression led me to the painful truth. In the depression, when I had been discarded and isolated and ignored for the choices I was making and the path I was stepping into, I wasn't being supported because those people were never supportive. And so it allowed me to even step into that nostalgic energy. And then when I was being nostalgic, because my life was changing, because I was changing, the nostalgia I thought was warm and cozy like a cup of hot chocolate was actually very toxic, like sugar can be and dairy can be, right? So then I was like, what am I longing for in these people and of my past? You know, when you're changing and you're not sure what that's looking like, you can feel like you're clinging on to the past. Like when you spend Christmas and when you set up boundaries and then you're spending Christmas by yourself, it's very quiet, but there's nothing wrong with that quiet. I actually kind of like the quiet, because compared to what I was before, I was in a room with a bunch of people who were competitive and competing for the attention of people that weren't for me. It'd be like, when I went to my sister's house for Christmas, like her and my brother would spend time cooking together, and she was collaborative with him, but she was competitive with me, and she was very male-centered with him. And when it was me, it was like, you're not good enough, you can't join us. It was like a Mean Girls club within a sibling environment. And then even like when it came to my dad, like where there'd be we would be sitting, the three of us, like me and my sister, my dad, like even that time I told her, like I can't get a word in edgewise. You guys are competing for all the air in the room. And anytime I would try to, like, I'd have to like try to get involved in the conversation, because I'm here too, and I would be cut off. I would be talked over. I would be disregarded. And it's just like, what am I here for? And then it felt like, as a single mom, I couldn't give what they could give, unless I went into debt. And so just it would be hard because, like, your kids are seeing other people get things that, and that's just part of life. That I just had to realize that was part of life. And then also recognizing, like, the things that they're buying for their kids, like, was a lot of, like, and I was doing this too, and I had to learn how to stop doing it, is like, you can't compensate your time and attention for material items. And I had to recognize where, I was trying to provide things for my kids because I didn't have a dad in the household, so I'd buy my kids pets, but those pets made more work for me. Great to have pets, but like if I'm already overworked, like there are things that I was spending my time and money on, like trying to renovate my home, but I was like, what if, because I thought it wasn't good enough, but I'm like, I wish I would have just spent my time with my kids and taken the time to teach them. And even if we are going to do things around the house, like garden and fix things around the house, like I want to teach them how to do it with me, as opposed to just say, go watch TV while I finish the basement. Like I missed a lot of teaching moments with my kids because I was just trying to race and get it done, not realizing like I could have taught them a lot of hands-on lessons in life that are appropriate, that they could, build off of, and even give them confidence. Even if it's like they'll never end up renovating a home, like they grew confidence because there were times where I did teach them how to, like I would turn the power off and I taught them how to like wire electrical outlets. And then they also learned that in high school. So like now they know how to do things in their home and they don't have to call someone else to do that. That builds confidence. I wish I would have played more. Instead of sending them out into sports clubs with their peers, while that can be important, I wish I played even more and took more time out to play games and spend time that way instead of always. It's challenging though, because like as a single mom, like you're in charge of everything, and then you have people around you who are just trying to like challenge you and like throw shit to distract you and like make things harder where it was already hard enough. And it was just weird because I kept rising to the occasion and I kept surpassing certain things in some rooms, and so they took that as like she doesn't need help. It was like, yeah, I do. It's just weird. And so that depression helped me learn who is for me and who is not. And it was slowing me down to look before I run. It made me start thinking about, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I doing this for these people? Why am I in these rooms? Why do I feel like I want to go drink with girls that don't give a shit about me. And then I would hear them talk about other people. I'm like, and that's when I learned about gossip. And like, if they're talking about, at first you want to be part of that gossip girl circle because you feel included and you're used to feeling isolated, but you're just a number for them. You're just a number for the bully, and it's false advertising because like they're around all these numbers and it makes you think that there's something important about that person, like they're some sort of leader, or like you want to be like part of that. But like when you recognize what you're part of, now you get that ick factor. Now you don't want to be any part of it. And now you run away, and now you're prey running away from the herd. And then you're targeted in a different way. It's like before you were targeted from the political energy of that narcissist. Like first they consider you a number because you looked up to them with those doe eyes, those naive, gullible eyes, like, oh, you have something that I don't have. And when you start to recognize in that process of the narcissistic dynamic, you start to, like, it's meant to show you actually you have everything you need within you, and that you don't need things outside of you. And that was a very codependent energy that I was in. And so the depression helped pull me apart from that. It's almost like that, the thickener in some of these elements, like they even put it in the coffee creamers and stuff, they thicken it up, and in milk they put thickeners in there. And so it's like you needed to, like, how hard is it to shake the bottle just to make those things come back together again? Like that enmeshment, like I had to be separated from it so I could take a look at it and be like, it's like margarine. When I became aware of margarine and how it separates, bleh, like, do you want to eat that when I recognize that margarine is what it is, that chemical, bleh. And that's what it is. It's a chemical connection, and it's based off, and it feels so strong, but sugar feels strong too. It doesn't mean it's good for you. And so I had to recognize, these are all the things that I was learning in the depression while I was being seated, while I was being buried and unburdened. I was releasing these emotions and I was grounding, and so you don't see it like that. If you just look at depression as one big label, you don't see that there's so many elements to it that are happening in there for you. And so, like, that's why partly during the depression, when I wasn't aware of what it was exactly, like I knew I felt down from something, but I didn't know exactly why yet. I couldn't recognize it. And so I did try, I think it's Xanax, is that what it is? Or Zoloft, or I don't know. It's something that is like, it starts with a Z. I don't think it was Xanax. I think it was like Zoloft. And I noticed I was just so tired. And so I would wake up in the morning, in 30 minutes, I was ready to go back to bed again. And while that rest, I needed that rest, I don't know, like part of the rest was getting the clarity. And so some of these medications, I don't know that you're still able to receive clarity while you're resting. And then the expectation is that you're supposed to still work while you're on these prescriptions. So that's not resting. So like, that's why I feel like some of these things, like, I found value in experiencing the depression with, the sadness, but in the clarity too. And I have experienced low points in life where I felt like, why am I even here? Should I be here? That's hard to say. I don't know that I would have done anything about it permanently, because when I experienced those moments, I had my kids in my life. And so without my kids, I don't know what that would have looked like. So that's, I can't speak on people who are more extremes. And like I said, what kept me out of the darkness and going too deep was my kids, And I think I knew I had some sort of value. I just couldn't touch on it at the time. There's something where it's just like, I don't know what that, and maybe that's God's source energy. I don't know. But for me, the pills were not beneficial. The antidepressants were not beneficial. And even, I did get in contact with some therapists all throughout my life, but I don't know, like, speaking and releasing that emotion was helpful. But I think you can do that without them. And to be honest, and it's like, I think I took certain pills and it took certain directions because I thought this doesn't seem normal. But if you look at all the pain that I had absorbed during my childhood, the amount of grieving I've done is actually pretty normal. And so not knowing what is normal and when I need to like start looking for other avenues, like people don't normalize grieving and what that looks like and the process it takes. So I'm going to do a video on that, like how I process things and like what that looks like. Because I think some people think, well, like I think I need help because I've been feeling sad for so long. But like if I had numbed myself with those pills, then I don't think I would have got the clarity as to what was making me feel so sad. And I wouldn't have been able to work that out. And so I would have continued to stay in those patterns because I would have just said, I'm depressed. And so I need pills. But that's not the period. That's settling. I need to keep going. Why am I feeling depressed? Why am I so sad in my life? And how can I change that? As opposed to just saying, oh, you're just chemically imbalanced, which is why you're depressed, which partially those are two truths in a lie, because the lie is like an omittance of why am I so sad? You know, well, that's just life. No, it's not. No, it doesn't have to be that. People are giving you the wrong message. Life can be better. You can expect more, but you're going to have to do different and you're going to have to do more, but you're going to do less in other areas, right? And so you have to let go of things from your past in order to make room for things of your future. And so that's where the depression helped me to expel and express all these sadness, but also it gave me a chance to, once I had, gotten into my emotions and expressed them. And even some of these people, like I had sadness when I was expressing myself to them and becoming very vulnerable and then telling them how they were hurting me and they didn't care. That allowed me to get information as to these people are not for me. They actually don't care about me. And that's what love is, and that's what love isn't. And that's what connections are, and that's what they aren't. So I had to recognize where my connections and relationships were, and I had to look at that is not what a relationship is. That is not what family is. I'm not like, this is not right. And so I had to learn what was wrong in order to move towards what was right for me. And there's a lot of confusion in that because you get a lot of things, like a lot of messages, family is first, family is blood, respect your elders and people who have life experience, they know best. But like if someone's been living their life the same pattern all throughout their life, and just because they have an age, they've gotten to the age of like 70 or something, doesn't make them smart, doesn't make them wise. It just means they survived. Survival mode. Which means being inauthentic. Survival mode is inauthentic, right? So they did what they had to do to get to where they're going. That's sellout energy. Do you want to sell yourself out? That's like prostitution. So why would you want to sell yourself out? That's not prosperity. That's still codependent. That's still control. The idea is to become independent of self and do what you want to do because that's what you want to do, right? But that means being independent because you can't bring your past into your future. If you like when you're growing, the chances of those people moving with you is very low, in my opinion. And maybe you can lead by example, and maybe they'll say, what is she doing? It seems to be working. Maybe I just need to learn from her. Is that possible? That's possible. Is it an expectation? No. I don't expect that. I don't expect people from my past to follow me here. And you got to think like it's taken me this much, and I have been surrendering to the process. And now, can they take what I've learned and fast track certain things? I hope so. For our world and society, I hope so. But hope without action is humiliation. So that's why I don't put much hope in like creating change for other people. I just have to focus on what I can do for myself and how I show up for my kids in order to do better and give them what I didn't receive. And, and that's where I keep pressing forward because I don't know what this looks like. I don't know other people that have built from the ground up. Like I said, I have been doing this on my own. There have been people, bits and pieces of people here and there along my journey that have given me a kind smile that is a stranger, who have given me some sort of kindness, but it's been a temporary, just to get me moving along. I don't have many people that, if I consider friends that are people that spend time with me outside of, so while I have kind people that I go to for support, but like there's an exchange there of money, that's not a friendship to me. While that I appreciate their kindness and their company, that is still, something that is not done as a friendship, if that makes sense. So I'm redefining what friendships are and what they aren't. And, it helps me recognize of how I need to show up and like, who is for me and who is not. And who is like putting people where they are, like, Prime Realty, like, yes, I enjoy your company and we have great conversation, but I'm still paying you for the reason why I'm here. You're still getting paid to be in this room with me. It's not like we're meeting outside of your business, right? That's friendships for me are like, we get together, we enjoy each other's company, and then, you know what I mean? Like that's friendship. So I don't have any true friends. I have my kids and I have my daughter, which we're getting closer, but I'm not a priority for her. She's designing her own life right now. So I'm not in her Prime Realty. And I think that makes sense because she's at an age where she's meant to become more independent of self. I'm not hurt by that. I'm recognizing she has her own life and I'm meant to develop mine. I did my job on raising my kids. I'm here now just for guidance and support, and they're meant to develop themselves. And I'm here for if they need some sort of advice. But at the same time, I learned a lot through the experience and action. So that's what they're doing. They're doing the experience in action. I need to step back and stop trying to like hover over them and be like, oh, when they're a kid just learning how to walk. Like that happens throughout different periods of their life. And I have to just learn how to like not catch them and let them, let them fall. And I'm here for when they feel like they need something from me more than, So yeah, that depression was helpful. It helped me learn who is for me and who is not. When I started getting clarity on who these people were and were they not, I had to grieve that. I had to learn how to grieve the discard. I had to recognize like this person is able to treat me so badly like this. But when I was with them, you had the love bomb. So it's the depression creates clarity in the confusion because you're like, you remember the person being like this, but now they're totally fine. It's interesting because the narcissists were like, oh, you're my bestie and I really have a soft spot for you and like we're good friends. But it's like friends, I had to redefine what friends are. You don't isolate and abandon friends. You don't punish your friends because they're not giving you what you're needing to provide for yourself. That's not my responsibility. And it's not my responsibility to take care of your kids and then you not show up for mine. And so like it's an unequal give and take. And they're okay with that because they're not giving anything. They're not losing anything. I am. And so that in that depression and that rest, I was able to get more clarity and be like, this person is not who I thought they were. And I put myself onto them. And that's when I also learned where I tend to put myself into others, but also in the way that I think that, I've changed, so I think they are capable of change. Why? Why did I think that? Do you see them changing? They're not changing. They're totally comfortable doing the same thing. So that's where I recognize those people are not for me. They don't fight for me like I fight for them. They don't have my back like I have their back. So now I take back my protection and I take back my wisdom and my support and I leave them off on their own to go hang out with the people that they choose to hang out with, and they choose not to spend time with me, and that's okay. I have to be okay with that. I've learned acceptance, and these are all different. So the depression is the beginning of the grieving process of where you need to grieve your old life while you move towards the new one. And it's a transition, and it takes a long time. It's years. I've been doing this for years, and it was very heavy at first, but then like you're still, refining yourself and still like finding it's like the lotus, that grows in the mud. Like you peel back these layers and there's always a little bit of extra emotional, like, wow, that like when I talk about things, I haven't talked about them. I'll think about them, but to say them is different. That emotion comes out when you say it, not just when you think it. And that's why it's good to say things out and that are in your head. I wonder if, this person and what of this, and like say it out loud and hear yourself say it. And does that make sense? If you had to say this, I learned to live my life that as if people could see it like a glass house. And so it made me be more it got me out of my shadow aspect, if that makes sense, because I'm like, you know what, there was a lot of shame in these connections, and that's where you get suppressed. And so, like, if you're to speak on things, when you start speaking on things to the people that hurt you, they want to cover that up. They want to keep that in the dark. That's how I know when people are not for me, and they want to project onto you and say it's your fault and this, and they have no accountability. And that's when I recognize time and time and time again, when I would try to have these conversations and I try to brought communication into the room where there was none, that's where I found out who is for me and who is not also. Because like, and that's painful, because like when I tell you, like, it's my fault if I don't say something. If I stay quiet, that's on me. But when I start speaking up and saying, this is hurtful to me, I don't like what you're doing here, this feels like you're doing this and this repeatedly, and they start, like, when you start seeing how they respond and you realize they actually don't care, and you just assume they care because of what? Because they would, like, this is where I was in a situationship with someone I used to date, and then we broke up and it turned into a situationship, and he was dealing with other people. And I used to think because we had physical interactions that he cared for me, and I was mistaking lust for love. So that's clarity I got. Just because he spends time with, like, I associate this act of love as like, I'm just doing this with you. I don't do this with everybody. I'm not casually like, and when I was younger, I was more casual about it because I was craving some sort of connection, but I was confused about that connection and how it's not healthy for me. And people would normalize it and make casual sex seem like everybody's doing it. And just because everybody was doing it doesn't make it right. Just like watching porn, just because everyone does it doesn't make it right. And so, that's what I mean. It's like, I learned in a depression, I was changing my belief systems. I was saying, you know what? I'm totally fine with saying I can't deal with a man if he's into porn. That is not okay for me. And if that's, it's not a judgment. It's just like, that's hurtful to me, and that's not fair to me because I'm not engaging that kind of behavior. It's just like, I recognize this person, this situationship lacked extreme boundaries, and I was creating boundaries, and he didn't like that because I was now putting value on me, and I was investing in myself, and I no longer just gave myself away freely to that person, and they didn't like that. And now they're disappeared. Now they're off. And they know they can't take from me because I've come out of prey energy, and I've empowered myself with education and discernment, and I took the time to pause instead of rush in. I gave that to myself. I gave myself time to rest. I gave myself time to, like, what is this going on? I gave myself time to inquire and ask the questions that I never felt like I could ask questions before, because in my environment when I was raised, I wasn't allowed to ask questions. I was expected just to follow instructions and not to ask, are these instructions even accurate? It's kind of like when you get a recipe and you feel so, you're like betrayed because like you try out a recipe and it's a healthy brownie, and then you're expecting a healthy brownie that tastes like a brownie and it tastes healthy. And all the reviews are misleading because they're like, this tastes great. This is the best brownie ever. It doesn't even taste healthy, which is a load of crap because it tastes like a healthy brownie. And if I'm looking for a healthy brownie, that's cool. But all these people telling you it doesn't taste healthy is a load of crap. This is like the carnivore. Like everyone's like, I love carnivore. I don't love carnivore. I like different elements to my food and my meals. I like variation. I don't want to just eat, and people like eating steak every day sounds wonderful. I don't like the chewy bits of steak. I don't like the cartilage. I like ground beef. I don't know. It's just like and ground beef is part of it, but it's like, you know what? I like vegetables. I like peppers, and I like other elements. I like Caesar salad. I like croutons. And so, like, I needed to modify myself. I needed to learn discipline and say, like, yeah, you can have a Caesar salad, but you got to watch your fat content, and you can't just eat Caesar salad for your life. You got to have other salads. There's like, you know what I mean? And so it's just weird because I came from where it was very controlled in the wrong areas of life. And so I had to learn how to control myself. And so the control is still there, but it's just different. When I learned how to, like, in the beginning, before the depression, other people were controlling my emotions, and I felt like a puppet to them, and I felt like I couldn't control that. But in the depression, when I learned to express my emotions, I became aware. Also, I got clarity on where these, when I got distance from this and I learned like this is not okay, something, and I didn't need to know what about, I learned like something about this is not okay. You know, I feel like I'm giving more, and this person is just feeding me bullshit, and he's never gonna learn to love me because he doesn't love himself. And I had to get that clarity as to why, no matter how much I felt love for that person, was it love or was I settling? You know, where was I not putting myself out there? Where was I? It's almost like I was keeping me in a room with people who, you know, didn't want to grow. So I had to ask myself also, why was I comfortable in that space? And so like there were workplaces where I felt like I was overqualified, but why was I still going there? What was I not willing to do to get myself into a better place? You know, so like there's a lot of like self-awareness, but looking and analyzing my life and like the decisions that, and like accountability, and like so like I could sit there and blame like, oh, you treat me badly and like men are like this, but I pushed myself past that. And then when I pushed myself past that, I also learned women are like this as well. And so it's people are like this. And so then I had to look at the dynamic that I had created, or that I was replicating in my life, was that I was prey and I was sacrificial and sacrificing and surviving. And I had to look at that was prey mentality, and I had to look at how could I empower myself. And I had to recognize where the predators in the room were, and that it wasn't just men and it wasn't just women, and it was people, and it was a human behavior, and that I had some sort of control in that dynamic, and where I was playing small, and that would allow other people to step on me. And so I had to put myself in a room, which right now is my house, and on the internet, to where it's like I have to put my full potential out there, my full version, whatever that looks like, oily roots or not. This is me, and it's authentic, and I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? And so if you accept me, that's cool. And people who can see where I'm coming from have been there before or on that way, so they understand it. They're like, you know what? There are times when I want to do a body shower and I don't want to wash my hair because something about that feels like too much today. You know, and it doesn't make me a bad person. It just says like I'm learning to manage because I've taken on too much before, and I'm learning how to dump that other people's responsibilities onto them, and I have to take accountability for myself. And that can mean that I still have taken on too much responsibility, and I have to prioritize that. And sometimes that means it's just a body shower, and if I'm just working around the house, then it means I'm not going to do my hair today. My hair looked great yesterday. You know, so it's like accepting the human parts of myself, and I used to accept that in other people, but those parts that were portraying as human were actually controlling, you know, and we're different. I used to consider myself like, I believe you can connect with every person on one thing. You know, if we all were to connect ourselves, we could really elevate and change. But there are people here that don't want to do that, and they still require you to do all the work, and they like the idea of rising with you, but they don't want to do the internal work. They don't want to look at how they're part of the problem. They're the weak link in the kink. And it's just like, okay, dude, like you're pulling us behind. And it's not about like blaming. It's just like acknowledging, where do you need support right now? How can I help you? How can I, what do you need? But if they can acknowledge that they're the weak link, because of their pride and ego, then they're closed off energy, and they're not willing to accept advice or support. So I can't work with that. You're closed off. You're not receiving. You need to be, the depression puts you into the surrender, which brings you into receiving energy. If you are not willing to receive outside information because you think you know everything, that's a God complex. That's not child. That's not, and you know, when you think of children learning to walk, they don't sit there and stay depressed on the couch forever because they fell the first time or the second time or the third time. They don't have that sort of like mentality. They're like, well, I got to do this. I got to get up. I want to learn to do this, right? So like, I want to learn. So something in these people have gotten them to where they don't want to learn anymore. And that's not my responsibility. I can't get you to want to learn. That's, you need to open your heart. And whether that's done through God, through society, through life, I don't know. It's not my job. I don't need to try to crack your nut. I don't give a shit anymore. That is not my work. That is not my responsibility. You know what? When you get to the point where your heart has cracked open, you're willing to like expel all that and replace it with something better, come see me. I'm right here, you know? But until that point happens, I can't force you to love yourself in order to be able to love me. You have to be able to see your potential and your purpose and all the great things that are in you. And I can see that. That was the problem. I could see all the people of my past. I was like, you know, I can see such great things in you, but if they can't see it, then they lash out on you when you try to level up. And the idea was we were meant to grow together, not grow apart. You know, that was my intention. I was here, I was doing things. Just gonna get emotional. A lot of my motivation was like I want to get there. I thought that if I just showed them how and like laid it out, that and that's the problem sometimes, is like, you know, parents that control and puppet their kids, like control their steps and say, you just got to do this, you just got to just step there, just do that, just act like this, just behave like that. And that's controlling. You know, so some aspects of me of being controlled as a child and in my environment, I had become controlling, thinking that I could control these people who are hurting, and thinking if I just showed them that they would just follow. But if they don't see anything wrong with what they're doing, they're in that cloud of delusion, then what I'm doing to them is just too far off. And also just, I had to think about when I was in their energy, what was I thinking? You know, when I was drinking and stuff, when I saw people who were working out, going to bed early, I was like mocking them. You know, I was like, who does that? Like, that's so extreme. But if you want to be successful, that's what it requires. And your health is your wealth. And I didn't realize that at the time. I thought I could just get away with the, you know, binge drinking on the weekends. And even when I was a parent, I was like, you know what? I could eat junk food on the weekends. I wasn't much of a drinker, but I would like, you know, binge eat on the weekends and then eat healthy during the week, you know? And I've revised that. Like, I do think, I don't want to be, I find that when I'm too, I just spit. When I'm too extreme, it's kind of like going 0 to 90. 0 to 90 is not sustainable. I have to learn things along the way. And like I said, gradually add the balls to juggle to get these things, to maintain it. So there are things I was doing a lot of 0 to 80, fast energy, fast here, fast there, making very impulsive. And so that's what the depression also helped me do, was like, I'm like, you know what? Even if I wanted to go out, I didn't even have the energy to put myself together. And I didn't have the money to, you know, like I felt like a clown at times, like with the wardrobe that I had. It felt like you know, I wasn't in my style at that time. I wasn't confident of myself. So like anything I put together, I didn't feel confident when I would go out there. And it's like, you know, also when I was going out there, if I don't feel confident around those people are not for me. Because right? So it's just like a lot of like recycling that, refining that, and getting to where I am now, to where I'm like, you know what? I don't need to invest in that emotion. I don't care anymore. I know there's other people out there. Have I met them yet? No, but that's the faith element. That's like knowing that the direction I'm moving is happening for me. I'm going to get there, and it's going to be there. It's kind of like that movie, Field of Dreams, like building it and they will come. Like I have to, that's what I believe is like, I did start on this path, like to become the best partner in order to attract the best partner. And sometimes I thought, well, maybe like, can I not meet someone who's where I'm at right now? And the answer is no, because I'm still very vulnerable and I'm still like not solid. You know, it's like, you can't eat cake on your first week of working out if you're trying to build a habit over 30 days. You can't bring that piece of cake in there. You can't bring the sweets in. It's the high risk. It's not worth it. You know, if you want a goal, you need a goal. So yeah, that's all I got for that one. Hopefully it was helpful. And the next one I'm going to do, I'm not really sure. I might take a break, but hopefully this is helpful. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.